What is up everyone, and welcome to some more F1 23 My Team Career Mode, and we are here for round number 4 of Season 6 of our Jaguar Racing career, and we're going to be at the Azerbaijan Grand Prix this weekend. It is, of course, a sprint weekend, which means 2 opportunities to score points and close the gap to my teammate Charles Leclerc in the Drivers' Championship. Now, we did a pretty good job of doing exactly that in the previous race out in China. If you've not watched that video yet, I would definitely recommend going and checking it out. It was a banger. We had some great battles for the win, and eventually I came out on top. It was a wet race, allowed me to defend a little bit easier perhaps than if it had been dry, which was nice, and yeah, we managed to hold on to the victory there, claim our first win of the season at a track that typically doesn't go so well for me. I actually got a bonus for some kind of mechanical failure. I don't remember there being any even like DRS fault or anything like that, but maybe there was something like that that happened at some point during that race that I just conveniently missed. But yeah, those were our first points of the season we scored, and it was a win as well, which is nice. We had a difficult start in the first couple of races, but now we are alive and kicking in this championship, and hopefully we can start mounting a bit of a Drivers' Championship challenge. However, at the moment, we sit in P5 in the standings. It's Charles Leclerc leading the championship by 5 points to George Russell. We're comfortably ahead in the Constructors standings, 20 points ahead of Red Bull, and hopefully we can have another good weekend here in Azerbaijan to really sort of break away from the rest of the pack. However, Azerbaijan typically not the strongest track in the world for me. You may remember in previous seasons gone by, if you've watched previous seasons of this career mode, that yeah, I sometimes can get into the points in Azerbaijan, but it's usually on the fringes of the points, maybe a P9, P10, that kind of thing. It's never usually a solid points finish. So if we can do that kind of thing here today, that would be absolutely fantastic. Obviously, China went differently to how I was expecting it would, but that's also the same reason why I'm even less optimistic about the chances of us doing well here in Azerbaijan, because we've already kind of had a better race than expected at one of our bogey tracks. It seems unlikely that that will happen twice. However, you never know. Maybe this is the season I get really lucky. Maybe, you know, 2 tracks that typically are okay for me, and Saudi Arabia and Australia didn't go so well. So maybe in response I can have a couple tracks that don't typically go so well for me actually go all right for a change. It will be a wet qualifying by the looks of things, but the race itself will be dry. That actually makes things a little bit complicated, but hopefully it will be all right in the qualifying. I'll go on a dry setup, obviously. In qualifying, going on a dry setup is usually not too big a deal, but in the race, it can be really punishing to go on a dry setup because you can overheat the tyres like crazy, especially at a track like Azerbaijan, where the rear tyres get quite hot and get quite worn anyway. You imagine if you're in the wet on a dry setup, that's going to be pretty brutal. We had pretty good pace here in practice. I thought it was okay. I still expect that we're going to struggle in the sprint and in the race, though. It didn't really change my opinion on that any. You can see we're still a second off of the fastest soft compound runner, so yeah, still a long way to go, but we will see what we can do when we get into qualifying now. This is usually the session that goes well for me. If a session is going to go well for me, it will be qualifying. That said, in the last few Azerbaijan qualifyings, I seem to recall being eliminated in Q1 or Q2. I don't remember the last time I actually got through to Q3 here, so I feel like that's got to be the target. If we can just make it through to Q3, I don't really mind what happens, and hopefully we can build from there. It's a 154.2 on our first flying lap on a set of intermediate tyres, and we're going to go out on another set of intermediate tyres. Towards the end of the session, things were drying up a little bit. You can see I'm all the way down in P22, but I am improving by a fairly significant margin. 2.7 seconds we're improving by, so we're going to be into the 151s here. It's a 151.4 as we cross the line, and that is good enough to put us P1 and see us through to Q2. Very, very solid performance. Obviously, I was the last to cross the line, so it makes sense. I had the driest track. I was going to go fastest. Doesn't seem like it's going to be representative of my pace as a whole. 0.3 faster than Piastri, and Leclerc makes it through as well in P8, which is good to see. George Russell out in Q1 there. That's a big story because he's obviously a contender for the World Championship so far this season. And then we have the Williams of Lawson and Fittipaldi, the AlphaTauris of De Vries and Stroll, and Esteban Ocon in the Alpine, the other elimination here in Q1. Yeah, I can't believe that from George Russell. That is a massive, massive mistake from him. I can only assume that he just went out at the wrong time, or maybe he made a mistake on his final flying lap or something like that, because George Russell should be getting through to Q2, probably to Q3 every single time, basically. You know, this is a guy who's 5 points off the lead of the World Championship. He's had 2 podiums already this season, and he will be taking no further part in qualifying. So, fresh set of soft compound tyres. 1:39.9 is the time that we do, and I reckon we'll have to probably improve on that a little bit if we want to make our way through to the following session. You can see we were right on the cusp here and not really improving either. Currently in P11, but we're improving by 700ths of a second. Is it going to be enough to see us through to the next session? As we cross the line, it's a 1:39.8, and that is good enough to put us in P9, and we just about make it through. It must have been super close between 9th, 10th and 11th there. We'll see exactly what the gap was now. So, Gasly was right there as well. So 8.32 for Gasly, 8.38 for myself, 8.75 for Magnussen, and Tsunoda 0.003 of a second off of making it through into the next session. But he does get knocked out alongside Norris, Pourchaire, Deruvala, Joe, and Hauger. Deruvala, a little bit of a better qualifying here. Obviously, I'm kind of focusing on him a bit because he's in that very high-profile seat of the Ferrari. But realistically, I don't think Q3 is on the cards for him at his current level. I think he needs to raise his game a little bit. And as I've said before, if he doesn't raise his game soon, I could definitely see Ferrari going for a mid-season driver swap, but we'll see whether that happens or not. As we do a 140.6 on a used set of soft compound tyres, we're going to need quite a significant improvement over that if we want to be anywhere other than 10th. You can see we're already 10th, and you know, people are probably going to end up going again. So we're going to have to do quite a good final lap here if we want any chance of making it through. You can see we are improving by about a second, but I had a few moments through the final few corners there which could potentially hamper our chances of doing a good lap here. You can see Piastri's on a 1:39.2 there, so I'm definitely not getting as high as 6th, but will I be able to get myself out of 10th? We're going to find out as we come up to the line. It's a 1:39.6, and that is good enough to put us in P10. We did not improve, but it's okay because we made it through to Q3.
And with qualifying complete, let's review our top 3 today. Gasly, Magnussen and Charles Leclerc. Goodbye for now then, but we are really just getting started. Make sure you join us again for Lights Out tomorrow.
Pierre Gasly coming up on P1 for the first time ever, I think. His teammate was knocked out in Q1. Pierre Gasly's made it to P1. Remarkable result for the Alpine. Leclerc is there in P3 as well, so he'll be able to challenge for the podium once again. And we will see what we can do from P10 on the grid as we get into the sprint for the Azerbaijan Grand Prix.
Forget pit stops, forget fuel management. It's pedal to the metal all the way here as we get ready for today's sprint. Let's run you through the driver grid order for today's exciting sprint. Pierre Gasly lines up on pole position, and it's Kevin Magnussen in P2. As we continue through the rest of the grid today, we have Leclerc, Perez, Albon, Oscar Piastri, Verstappen, Sargent, Doohan, Robinson, Tsunoda, Norris, Théo Pourchaire, Deruvala, Joe, Hauger, Liam Lawson, Ocon, De Vries, Fittipaldi, Russell, and Lance Stroll brings the grid to a close. Which of these drivers will get pole position today? We will soon find out.
And they send us down to the grid, but there is absolutely nothing for the commentators to say. So I'm going to fill the time. Hopefully, Charles Leclerc will be able to get at least a top 3 here. That would be the ideal scenario, at least in the race. I don't really mind about the sprint. It's low points, but obviously I'd still like him to get a few points here if he can. For me, I would ideally like to get into the points in the sprint here, but hopefully we can at least stay in the top 10 so we can compete for points in the race tomorrow. And yeah, looking at strategy here, looks like it is going to be the medium tyres for the duration of the sprint here. I was thinking about doing a set of softs, but they have suggested it would not be wise for me to do that. So I'm going to take their advice. The softs only last about 14 laps around here in total. So doing 9 laps on them, they're going to be very worn out by that point. So yeah, the mediums by comparison do 19, which yeah, I think that we will. Hopefully will be able to take those 9 laps without too much of a headache. And well, I wouldn't be surprised if you don't see me use the soft compound tyres basically at all here this weekend, because they do wear out quite quickly. And I mean, you know how much I struggle on soft compound tyres, generally speaking. So yeah, the grid forming up, we had a good parking ourselves, and we will see if we can challenge these cars around us as the lights come on and the lights go out. And we've had a good getaway compared to Jack Doohan, who gets a bit bogged down there. Max Verstappen as well, not the greatest getaway from him. We got the inside of Sargent, look up the inside of Piastri, but we can't make the move. Verstappen around the outside, looks like Sargent might go around the outside as well, but we do manage to hold on to P8 from the driver in the Aston Martin. Meanwhile, Leclerc not had the greatest of starts. He started P3, he's already down to P6 by the looks of things. He was P5 for a second there, but he's now in P6 as Max Verstappen makes his way ahead of him. We're going to see if we can put some pressure on Oscar Piastri here as we go around the outside of the Australian driver in the McLaren up into P7, and it has been a good start for us here. We've made up 3 positions. Hopefully we can hold on to a few points in the sprint here. That would be the ideal situation, but it's going to be easier said than done as we not too far away from the back of our teammate here, Charles Leclerc, but I mean, you know that the AI typically tend to have superior pace. Meanwhile, Pierre Gasly still leading out in front at the moment in the sprint. He's had a really good start to things as we actually clipped the wall there a tiny bit. Fortunately, no damage. But yeah, it is a very narrow street circuit. It's very easy to do that, and I need to be careful not to give myself any damage in the process of doing that as we narrowly avoid going off the track there as well. We're currently staying within a second of Charles Leclerc, but this is the area in which I am probably the weakest around this circuit. You can see that he's pulled away from me by about 0.4 of a second over the course of that straight, which is, you know, not a small amount by any stretch of the imagination. And now, as we make our way into the final straight, you can see that there's 1.4 seconds between us. Meanwhile, Piastri very close behind us, 0.4 of a second. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe he's going to try and use the slipstream to try and go for a run on me into turn 1. So we're going to have to burn quite a bit of battery to try and keep him behind. Meanwhile, Leclerc is not looking like he's close enough to make a move on Max Verstappen. Piastri closing me down all the time. Is he going to be close enough to go for a move into the first corner? No, not on this occasion. And we hold on to P7 through the first lap. It's been a good start for us. We make our way into lap 3 now, and you can see that we are right on the back of Verstappen and Leclerc, and we're actually looking to go for a bit of a move here on Max Verstappen. We're going to try and go round the outside at the next corner maybe, but he brakes very late, gets really mixed up there actually, almost goes into Charles Leclerc, who's now up into P5, and now we're going to try and send one up the inside of Max Verstappen. We make a bit of contact with him, we make a bit of contact twice. That was almost certainly my fault. I dived from a long way back, but the game isn't telling me to give the position back, and so I'm holding on to it for dear life. And Max Verstappen can settle for P7 for the time being, but I wouldn't be surprised if maybe he mounts a bit of a challenge on us again later on in the race as we exceed the track limits there. But, you know, first warning, only 9 laps. You would hope that I would be able to at least avoid going off track 3 times in the space of 9 laps, given that I can usually pretty consistently do it over the course of an entire race. You know, third of the distance should not be that difficult. Verstappen right on the back of me, and he's not even got the DRS yet. 600th of a second is the gap, and with that DRS, I would imagine he's just going to breeze past me, and maybe Oscar Piastri is going to go for a move around the outside here as well. He makes a bit of contact with us. We were trying to defend the position. Maybe we squeezed him too tight to the inside. I'm not sure, but it's allowed Verstappen to get through on us, and fortunately we do manage to defend the position from the Australian driver in the McLaren for the time being, as we're now going to try and stay with Max Verstappen, but you can see that he's already gapped us by 0.7 of a second through those first couple of corners. We are going to close him down a little bit with the DRS, but I don't think it is going to be enough as we make more contact with the wall there, and fortunately once again avoid damage. And you can see as we make our way around the final few corners before we get into this big long straight, nothing else really happened for the remainder of the sprint. You know, Oscar Piastri started to fall away from me a little bit, Max Verstappen pulled away, Gasly unfortunately couldn't hold on to the lead. He's going to end up in P5. It was P4 for Charles Leclerc there, but it is Perez who wins it from Magnussen and Albon is the top 3 there. But we are going to cross the line, take P7. It's a couple of good points here in the sprint, and yeah, hopefully we can use this result to build from that and score some more good points in the actual race. You know, a lot more points up for grabs tomorrow. Maybe we can even get ourselves into the top 5. Who knows?
Charles Leclerc, currently leading the championship standings, extends his lead even further with this result. So let's have a quick look at how the drivers' standings have changed. Well, that wraps up Sprint. All that remains is the main event. We'll be live and uninterrupted for the Grand Prix tomorrow, so make sure you join us then.
Sergio Perez picking up the slack where his other teammate obviously had that very poor qualifying. George Russell not cracking the top 14 yet. We'll see if he's able to get a good result tomorrow. But for us, it's just going to be about maximising our result from P7, ideally aiming for that top 5. But we will see what we can do as we get into the Azerbaijan Grand Prix.
The starting line set a few meters away from the Caspian Sea. It is an unusual location, and it is one where starting low down the grid does not mean the end for your race. We've seen Stroll and Sainz take podiums here from the 4th row. Can anyone emulate them today? The Baku city circuit measures roughly 6 kilometers and is made up of 20 corners and 2 DRS zones. The circuit winds around the narrow city, through the old town, and even brushes against the city's medieval walls. However, as beautiful as the setting is, this track is also a ferocious technical challenge, where the smallest of mistakes could lead to catastrophic consequence for any one of our drivers. Off the back of a fantastic qualifying session, it's time to see how our starting grid looks like for today's race. It's Sergio Perez on pole today, with Kevin Magnussen alongside. Looking at the rest of today's grid, we have Albon, Leclerc, Gasly, Verstappen, Robinson, Oscar Piastri, Sargent, Tsunoda, Doohan, Teo Porcher, Deruvala, Hauger, Norris, Ocon, Russell, Fittipaldi, Joe, De Vries, Stroll, and Liam Lawson. And now it's time to head down to the track. And Anthony Davidson joins us for this one. And great to have your company. There's no weather to worry about here. What will be going through the drivers' minds as they finish these last-minute preparations?
Well, I imagine they'll be starting to feel the adrenaline as they anticipate the run down into turn 1, a bit like preparing to go into battle. The unknown situation will bring nerves, but that's a good thing. It will keep them focused on the moment and on their surroundings as we build towards the start of the Grand Prix.
Okay, here we go. I know what you can do. Don't let me down.
Typically, I have a tendency to go backwards here a little bit, and in no small part, I think that is due to the fact that we usually go on the wrong tyre strategy here. Going on the soft compound tyres here, I think would be a big mistake. So I'm looking at maybe doing a medium hard here for a change. It does mean that we're maybe going to be a little bit slower on tyres compared to some of the other cars around us. But I honestly think that that is preferable to being incredibly slower at the end of the stint. I'd rather be consistently slower over the course of the entire stint than just like massively dropping off at the end and falling down the order. So yeah, that's my rationale for going on the mediums. We're doing a tiny bit of an undercut here, and we'll see if it actually works or not. And yeah, we're going to be starting in P7 here, which is probably one of the best positions I've ever started in Azerbaijan Grand Prix in on either of the 2 games that I've made my team career mode videos on, because on last year's game I famously struggled with it a little bit as well, which is really weird because in years gone by this was one of my strongest tracks on the calendar. I don't know if the new cars that they've added have made it more difficult to race around this circuit or something like that. But in any case, enough yapping. It's time for the lights to come on. And the lights go out, and we've had a good getaway once again. We're going to get ahead of Verstappen nice and quickly, but we're in a cul-de-sac. Can't get past Gasly and Albon. Albon, who's had an absolutely atrocious start there, and yeah, we are unfortunately going to have to settle in for P6. I feel like if we had room to go somewhere, we could have potentially been P4 off the start there, but we're now going to try and switch it back on Pierre Gasly up the inside. We make our way into P5. We'll be able to hold on to this position. Obviously, he's going to have the outside line into the next corner, but he will be blocked off by Alex Albon ever so slightly. Pierre Gasly, though, diving round the outside. Who's going to win out in this battle between myself and the Alpine driver? He was on pole for the sprint, of course. He's going to dive up the inside. We make a bit of contact there. I don't know what he was doing. Sends it up the inside, and we have to kind of, you know, let him take up some space on the racetrack there. And once again, he's done the same thing. Is this a joke? Is he joking? What is this? I'm already 3 seconds behind Alex Albon. I have no idea what Pierre Gasly is trying to do. But we do the same thing back to him. If it's legal, it's legal. You know what I mean? So, yeah, we make our way up into P5. Pierre Gasly can absolutely get stuffed. And yeah, we are currently on course to score double digits worth of points here in the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, but it's a long race ahead of us. We've still got a very long way to go, 26 laps before we can think about potentially, you know, celebrating, and hopefully Leclerc will be able to get a strong result here as well. I think he's currently running in P2 by the looks of things, with Perez in P3. Magnussen currently leading the race. What a start from him, and could be on for his first victory in almost 4 years, Kevin Magnussen. It was obviously at this circuit 4 years ago that Nico Hülkenberg picked up his first win in that Haas, and then Magnussen would go on to win another race in the Haas in France it was that year, and those are the only victories that those drivers picked up across the entire you know, breadth of their careers so far. Magnussen could be potentially on for a second one here today. Couldn't manage it when he was racing for our team, of course. And Max Verstappen piling some pressure on me up the inside, but we are going to hang it around the outside of him, and hopefully that will be enough for us to keep him behind for the time being. Leclerc, meanwhile, falling down behind Perez into P3, and yeah, just not having the best race right now, Charles Leclerc. You know, obviously it's not bad, but ideally I would have liked him to have been winning this race, especially given that some of the strongest drivers on the grid are out of action here today. You know, there's no Norris, he's outside the top 10, no Russell, who's also outside the top 10. You would think this should be an easy Leclerc victory here today, especially with me holding up Verstappen and keeping him behind, but not for much longer, you'd have to imagine. Max Verstappen a very long way ahead of me now as we make our way into the first corner on lap 4, and yeah, we might just have to say goodbye to the Dutch driver and focus in on trying to consolidate P6 from Pierre Gasly. If we can stay in his DRS range, this would be the ideal scenario, because it means that we have a higher likelihood of keeping Gasly behind, but I think it is going to be maybe a bit of a foregone conclusion here. These guys on the soft compound tyres, obviously they're going to be a bit faster than me, and meanwhile you can see as Max Verstappen now has broken away by quite a significant margin. Not only is Gasly closing me down, but his compatriot Théo Pourchaire is also pretty close behind as well. There's not quite you know, a DRS train going on here, but it's not too far away from happening, especially if I go quite deep into that corner. You know, Théo Pourchaire, now he's within a second of me, and we're going to have to work quite hard to try and break away from him on lap 5. Really struggling into some of these corners, just not getting the car hooked up through some of these low-speed corners right now, and we're going to have to work very, very hard to break away from Théo Pourchaire once again. We've got that DRS to Pierre Gasly, but will we be able to stay in range of him? I'm not convinced that we will. As we make our way now onto lap number 8, you can see that the gap has fortunately managed to extend a little bit behind, and we will be, you know, just holding on to this P7 for the time being. Kept the gap honest to Pierre Gasly, but really I would have liked to have stayed with him a bit more than this if we could help it. But you know, beggars can't be choosers, and we'll just have to take what we can get here. Logan Sargent, meanwhile, is you know, fairly far behind us on those hard compound tyres. Though he's only going to get closer to us as the stint goes on. His hard compound tyres will wear out at a far slower rate than my mediums, and a much slower rate than these softs of everyone around us. But you know, obviously the AI not really as affected by tyre wear as the player, and that means that just we don't really have anything that we can do in terms of closing them down over the course of the stint. But what that does mean is that on lap 12, I'm coming into the pit lane. Leclerc actually pitted on the same lap as me here, so hopefully we've had enough of a gap between us that doesn't really impact my pit stop too dramatically. On the turn-in, you can see that we were held up momentarily there, but fortunately they get the tyres off nice and quickly. 1.9 second pit stop, and yeah, it should be fairly okay for us. You can see Théo Pourchaire has obviously pitted earlier, and he is very close to us on the exit of the pit. In fact, he's so close to us, he's just hit us into turn 2. I don't know what he was doing there, but he's completely lost his front wing, you can see there. Théo Pourchaire absolutely taking himself out of point scoring opportunity there. I don't know what he was expecting was going to happen in this scenario, but yeah, the French driver losing his head a little bit maybe, and obviously he will have to box at the end of this lap. 4.5 seconds down on us now. He's held up all the cars behind so he can focus entirely on making it past the cars in front, which these two Williams, I believe, started on the hard, so they're yet to pit. But Pierre Gasly, obviously, is someone we were racing with before the pit stop phase, and we're going to see if we can put a bit of a challenge on him now with the DRS in this next DRS zone, make our way past our former teammate Enzo Fittipaldi, and now we're going to try and break past Pierre Gasly into turn number 3. We're going to go around the outside, squeeze him to the inside. Fortunately, he doesn't go for a kamikaze move on us this time, and that is going to allow us to hold on to the P12 as it is at the moment. Not sure what net position this is, maybe P6 I think. We will see how things unfold as the rest of the cars come into the pit lane. We're going to see if we can get past Liam Lawson now into this next DRS zone. Should be a fairly trivial affair. You can see that he is on obviously much older tyres than us, much harder tyres as well, or well, worn out tyres I should say, same hardness. But yeah, we're going to break past Liam Lawson with that DRS. It becomes a fairly easy situation for us to get back past him, and hopefully he just won't be a nuisance in the next DRS zone, because feasibly Liam Lawson has absolutely nothing to fight with here. Meanwhile, you can see there was a few cars in front there, Hauger and Daruvala, who were yet to pit as well. Hauger still waiting on him to pit, so I think we're currently in net P6. However, George Russell is going to go for a move, a very opportunistic move there, somehow makes it work round the outside there. I don't know how he's even pulled that off. That was super scary. But yeah, George Russell makes his way up into P7. It will be P6 once Hauger pits, I believe, and then we'll just see how the rest of the race unfolds beyond that point. I don't think that I will be able to get back past many more of these guys, so it's just going to be a case of trying to keep the cars who are behind me for as long as I can. However, we are closing down George Russell at a rate of knots. Hauger coming into the pits now, going to promote us up 1 position, maybe 2 positions if we can overtake him into the corner. But you know, fresh soft compound tyres versus older hard compound tyres. You saw it with Verstappen and Hamilton in 2021, and once again with myself and Russell, it's going to be the softer compound of tyre winning out on this occasion. So we're going to have to settle for second best here, and just hope that we can maybe capitalise on a few errors from some cars in front of us as we make our way into the closing stages of this Grand Prix. Only 8 laps to go now, and our DRS is offline. So now we're going to have to hope like hell that we don't get caught by anyone. However, we do have a virtual safety car here, as somebody is out of the race. Not clear who that was, but yeah, there is a retirement from the race, and that is going to mean that it's upgraded to a full safety car. Actually, did anyone see which driver that was? Because it flashed up for like a second, and I have no idea who it was. We'll see if we can try and identify who it might be as the race progresses. But as we get onto the safety car restart now, we're going to try and go up the inside of George Russell. Can't jump too early, but at the same time, you know, I don't want to be caught out. So we're going to try and send it up the inside of George Russell there, squeeze him to the outside of the corner, but give him enough room that he doesn't go into the wall. Meanwhile, Magnussen and Verstappen having a big battle here, and we're going to see if we can capitalise on this as well. With the battery, we're going to try and close them down into the next corner, turn 3. Verstappen defending to the inside for some reason. Maybe we can go for a double overtake here around the outside of both Magnussen and Verstappen up into P4. This safety car, a little bit of a godsend for me. I thought that we were really going to struggle with all these drivers on the soft compound tyres behind us, but maybe they're just starting to wear out just that little bit too much to be competitive with the hard compound tyres, which are starting to come into their own a little bit here. So we have made our way up into P4 now, and you can see as we look to the replay camera, this is Kevin Magnussen going for a move on Max Verstappen there, but he's having some sort of mechanical failure. Kevin Magnussen, absolutely devastating for a man who was once leading the race in that McLaren. He is going to be out of the race, and he is going to be parking up by the pit exit, and that will be race over for Kevin Magnussen. So as we make our way onto lap 23, we're still running in P4. We've actually kept pretty honest to Alex Albon there. 2 seconds the gap between us, so there is a chance for us to maybe go for the podium here. However, it might be cruelly snatched away from us, as George Russell is going to go for a move on us, I imagine. And you know, his soft compound tyre is still very much in their operating window. Round the outside, George Russell chooses to go. Don't ask me why, but yeah, we just can't quite seem to stay with him. Meanwhile, Gasly and Verstappen 5 seconds down on us, so I don't think we're going to fall any further than P5. But is there a chance for us to maybe capitalise on Alex Albon having a few woes? Maybe he'll hold up George Russell as well, and maybe we'll be able to make up both positions. I think that's a very opportunistic way of looking at things, but you know, even if we can make up one of these positions, even where we are right now, this is a far better result in this Azerbaijan Grand Prix than I expected. George Russell eventually did get ahead of Alex Albon. However, you can see that we have stayed with him, and we have closed down further and further on the Thai driver, and we are now going to try and go for a move into the final lap of the race. Can we get Alex Albon? Yes. We just about overtake him, and I think we'll be able to make the move stick. I don't think he's going to go for a move up the inside. So now all we have to do is hold on to this position for just a few more corners, just one more lap, and we will be P4 here in the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. You can see Alex Albon not close enough to go for a move through this DRS zone. So all we have to hope is that we can break away from him enough over the course of this lap to the point that he will not mount a challenge on us through that next DRS zone towards the finish line. It does look like it's going to be Red Bull 1 and 3 here. George Russell from P17 on the grid has somehow come through to snatch P3 here. I don't know if he just got lucky with that safety car or something, because it came out on lap 18, but surely... No, he'd already pitted by that point. I don't know how George Russell has managed to come through the field like that. Will be Sergio Perez picking up victory. Leclerc in P2. Russell will take P3. Alex Albon, he's not close enough to go for a move on us, and we are going to cross the line to take P4 in a far better Azerbaijan Grand Prix than I ever could have imagined would have happened. P4. If you'd have given me the opportunity to get P4 at the start of the weekend, I would have bitten your arm off. So I am very, very happy with that. George Russell deservedly getting driver of the day, and P4 for us.
At a place where it is so easy to find the wall, they've found the top step of the podium. The celebrations begin in Baku. Anthony Davidson, a resounding victory today. What set them apart from the rest?
Well, they certainly stood out as a driver with tons of confidence on the track. I think their ability to keep their cool, even during some of the more hectic parts of the race, meant they were able to capitalise on the mistakes of other drivers, giving them the opportunity to make their way to the top spot with ease.
The drivers are en route to the podium as we speak. What a fantastic win for the Red Bull team. They've performed exceptionally today, keeping us firmly on the edge of our seats throughout the entirety of the race. Congratulations to everyone at the team.
Sergio Perez proving once again why he's the king of the streets. He won the sprint, he wins the race, and he will be going away with a lot of points from this weekend. I think he was behind us in the championship before this, if I'm not mistaken, but that is certainly going to improve his chances of winning the championship and proving that he's not a wingman to whatever driver is near him. Leclerc gets P2 there. He has not been off the podium so far this season, and it is Russell coming home in P3.
So let's see how the drivers' standings have changed. Charles Leclerc, currently leading the championship standings, extends his lead even further with this result. So, Anthony Davidson, who would you rank as your driver of the day?
Well, you can't fault anything that Sergio Perez did out on the track today. He drove flawlessly, making him an easy pick.
It's time to see how things are shaping up in the Constructors Championship. The owner-drivers team moved to the top of the table.
Meanwhile, good work from Aston Martin this weekend, who pushed themselves further up the order.
After an event like that, who knows what the sport has in store for us next time? Be sure to join us again as we continue to bring you the latest excitement in Formula One.
Well, we have overtaken Oscar Piastri in the driver's standings. However, Sergio Perez, with a very strong race this weekend, he has overtaken us. So we stay P5 in the driver's standings. Charles Leclerc extending his lead out in front of George Russell. And then in the Constructors Championship as well, we are, still leading, but the gap has come down a little bit because Red Bull did have a slightly stronger weekend than us over the course of the Azerbaijan Grand Prix and the sprint as well. 1 and 3 for them in the race, 2 and 4 for us. You know, it wasn't a bad race weekend by any stretch of the imagination for our team, and I think if we can come out with more races like this, you know, maybe a few more wins. Obviously, I've had a win this season. Charles Leclerc's had a win this season, and if we can continue making some more strong podium finishes and top 5 finishes for the team, I think that there is a very good opportunity for us to win this Constructors Championship quite convincingly. And I saw a few comments on the last video saying exactly that people felt like there was a good chance. You can see there's the contact between myself and Teo Pourchaire. Yeah, there's a very good chance of us winning the Constructors Championship. You know, when I got that victory in China, we really did start to look quite good, and we've made it through some of the more difficult races of the season now. You know, Saudi Arabia, China, Azerbaijan, we made it through, and we've actually, ended up in a pretty good position, I would say. Obviously, I would have liked to have scored more points in those first 2 races of the season, but it's not the end of the world that we didn't. Obviously last season I had a few pointless races in the early part of the season. I still came through to win the championship with 2 races to go. So, I'm not too downhearted about that. But yeah, next up, I believe, is Miami, which is going to be an interesting race. We will see what our pace is like around there, because I've had races in this career mode where I've looked completely off the pace and out of my depth in some seasons, and failed to score points. But then I've also had scenarios where there was that one race where I was challenging for a podium, potentially looking like I might even win the damn thing, and then I had a mechanical failure a few laps before the end. So yeah, it really just depends on what kind of race we end up having. I think obviously luck will play into it, as it always does. Like here, for example, I obviously got a little bit lucky with that late safety car that allowed me to go for this beautiful double overtake that I think you're about to see around the outside of Magnussen and Verstappen. So without that, we probably would have been P6, I would imagine, because obviously Magnussen still would have retired from the race, but I don't envision that we would have actually got ahead of any of the cars we overtook if not for that safety car. So yeah, we capitalised on some of our advantages, and that's just what we've got to keep doing over the course of the season. And then hopefully we should be able to get ourselves involved in not only a Drivers' Championship fight, but also a Constructors' Championship fight at the end of the season, and maybe be a little bit more convincing in the drivers' standings. Obviously Charles Leclerc, he's already had 4 podiums this season. Jack Doohan and Kevin Magnussen had a combined total of 1 in the last couple of seasons that we've been contending for the Drivers' Championship. So I'm very optimistic about our chances of winning it this season, because we came close in those 2 seasons as well. So yeah, Charles Leclerc proving to be a monster of a teammate so far. But that is going to be it for this video. If you enjoyed, please make sure you like and subscribe, and hopefully I will see you in the next one.